The sound hit like thunder through the quiet. Saturday morning, a chainsaw ripping through wood. I shot up from my chair, coffee spilling across my paperwork, and bolted for the back porch. What I saw nearly made my heart stop. There in my yard was Patricia Hendris, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, chainsaw in hand, grinning like she'd just won the lottery as my old maple tree crashed to the ground. "Patricia, what the hell are you doing?" I yelled. She didn't even flinch. She just turned, tilted her sunglasses down, and said, "Oh, good morning, John. That tree was violating HOA sightline regulations. I'm doing you a favor." My jaw nearly hit the deck. That maple had been there since my grandfather built this house. My kids carved their initials into it last summer. It wasn't blocking anything except her view of my backyard, which she apparently thought she owned too. "Turn that thing off before I call the cops," I snapped, storming closer. But she just waved the chainsaw like a baton. "Oh, please, John. We both know the HOA can fine you for refusing compliance. I'm just saving you the paperwork." She walked off with a smirk, leaving me standing in the sawdust with a dead tree and an even deader sense of calm. That was the moment I decided. If she wanted a war, I'd give her one. I called the city arborist, and sure enough, the tree was on my property, completely legal. Patricia had just committed vandalism and trespassing, but I didn't want to just sue her. No, Patricia lived for control. She thrived on rules, fences, and boundaries. So I started planning something better, something poetic. That evening, as the golden light hit the stump of my old maple, I pulled out a notepad and sketched a deck design, one that would extend right up to her fence line. If she wanted to dictate what I could or couldn't have in my yard, then I'd give her a permanent reminder of what she'd lost. I'd build a deck so big, so perfect, it would block her sunset view, and legally, she couldn't do a damn thing about it. The war over that tree had just begun, and Patricia was about to learn that cutting it down was the biggest mistake she'd ever made. I spent the next few days walking my yard like a general surveying a battlefield. The stump of my beloved maple felt like a scar, a constant reminder that Patricia thought she could intimidate me. But I was already turning the tables in my mind. I wasn't just going to rebuild. I was going to rewrite the rules in my own backyard. I started measuring. Every inch mattered. My plan was simple but bold. A deck that hugged the property line, right where her fence stood. Not just a simple platform. This would be a statement piece. A deck that screamed, "You don't control me." I researched local codes, ensuring every post, beam, and plank would be perfectly legal. Patricia loved calling the HOA when she thought someone crossed a line. But this time, I'd cross every line without ever stepping out of the law. Next came materials. I wanted something that would look classy and permanent. Something that would force her to admire it, if she dared. I chose dark-stained cedar planks, weather-resistant composite decking, and brushed steel railings. Even the thought of laying down those first boards made me grin. This wasn't just about revenge. It was architectural justice. I also thought about timing. Patricia worked early mornings at the HOA office, and she liked her afternoons. Quiet. Perfect. I'd start the construction at sunrise. So by the time she peered out her kitchen window, she'd see a solid, gorgeous deck climbing right toward her fence line. I could almost hear her gasp, the corners of her mouth twitching with disbelief. But this wasn't just for her. My family loved the idea too. My kids would finally have a proper space to play, outside without worrying about her. Constant meddling, even my neighbors, who had been quietly watching her antics, were starting to give subtle nods of encouragement. They all hated Patricia's constant policing of everyone else's property. The first day of construction, I dug the post holes, set the foundation, and felt a surge of satisfaction every time I hit a level perfectly. By evening, the first beams were in place, and the deck began taking shape. From the corner of my eye, I could see Patricia peeking through her blinds, her lips pressed into that familiar tight line of hers. She knew something was happening, but she had no idea just how permanent this would be. By the end of the week, the deck was more than just boards and nails. It was a bold declaration. Every board laid was a reminder that I wasn't going to be bullied, that my property, my space, and my family came first. And Patricia's fence? Let's just say it was about to get a front row seat to her own humiliation. By midweek, the deck was taking shape. From the moment the first boards reached the height of Patricia's fence, I could feel the tension in the neighborhood rise like electricity in the air before a storm. Neighbors whispered as they walked by, some shaking their heads, some chuckling quietly. Patricia, of course, was at her window, arms folded, glaring like a hawk ready to dive. I worked fast, every screw and beam meticulously placed. Not a single corner crooked, not a single plank out of alignment. It wasn't just construction. It was a message. And as I laid the last boards along the property line, I made sure they topped her fence by a few inches. Just enough to block her view, just enough to remind her who really owned this space. That evening, I stepped back to admire the work. The deck stretched boldly along the side of my property, polished, stable, and entirely legal. The sunlight glinted off the steel railings, casting shadows that danced across her meticulously trimmed lawn. I almost laughed out loud when I noticed her pace increase inside, moving back and forth as if her own fence had become a prison wall. Of course, Patricia didn't waste time. She marched over to the property line the next morning, clipboard in hand, as if she were about to deliver a violation notice from the heavens. "John," she called, sharp and high-pitched. "This deck is completely unacceptable. The HOA?" I held up a hand, smiling. "Funny thing, Patricia. I checked the codes. Every inch of this deck is legal. Every post, every railing, every plank. You might not like it, but I didn't break any rules." Her face twisted with disbelief, her eyes darting from the deck to the fence, back to me. But it's so close to my property. You can't do that." "Oh, I can," I said calmly, "because it's on my property. And if you want a better view, maybe you should have thought twice before cutting down my tree." Her hands trembled on the clipboard. She looked around, probably hoping some HOA official would materialize to save her from her humiliation. But no one came. My neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, some smirking openly, some shaking their heads in disbelief at her audacity. Patricia's fury was palpable. She opened her mouth, probably to call the police, but I was already prepared. I had the property maps, the permit approvals, and every document proving she had no legal standing to touch my deck or my property. Her threats fizzled the moment I calmly laid them on the ground. By the end of the confrontation, Patricia stormed off, muttering about fines, violations, and "this isn't over." But I knew better. The deck wasn't just a structure. It was a victory, a permanent reminder that she couldn't bully me, that her reign of backyard terror was over. And yet, deep down, I knew she wouldn't stop plotting. This was far from the end. By the weekend, the deck was fully finished. The dark cedar gleamed under the sun, the steel railings reflected the sky, and the structure itself looked like it had belonged there for decades. It wasn't just a deck anymore. It was a monument to patience, planning, and poetic justice. I stepped back to admire it, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. Every inch of it was mine, legally and beautifully. Patricia, of course, could not resist inspecting it. She appeared at her fence, nose practically pressed to the rails, trying to calculate how to fix this violation. Her face twisted between disbelief and rage, a mixture so comical my kids couldn't stop giggling from the porch. I waved at her, casually sipping a lemonade. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I said. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The deck blocked her sunset view entirely. That evening, friends and neighbors came by. They all praised the craftsmanship, the boldness, and, secretly, the revenge. Someone even joked that the deck should have a plaque, in memory of the maple tree and the tyranny it fell to. We laughed. But I knew Patricia wouldn't find it funny. She was pacing behind her fence, muttering about complaints, violations, and HOA meetings she intended to call, but by then it was too late. Even the HOA had to acknowledge the legality of the construction. I had meticulously followed every code, submitted the permits, and kept documentation of everything. Patricia's attempts to bully me had completely backfired. The more she tried to contest it, the more obvious it became to the HOA that she was acting out of personal vendetta rather than concern for regulations. The best part? The deck became a space for family and friends. My kids played freely, my wife hosted barbecues, and we spent evenings watching the sunset. Something Patricia had arrogantly tried to claim as hers. Every laugh, every cheer from our new deck was a quiet, satisfying reminder that she had no control here. Weeks passed, and Patricia's fury simmered into grudging acceptance. She still glared occasionally, but there was nothing she could do. I'd turned a simple act of vandalism into a personal victory, transforming frustration into a lasting legacy. The deck wasn't just wood and steel, it was a symbol of standing up, standing firm, and turning petty aggression into triumph. In the end, it wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about reclaiming my space, my peace, and my pride. Patricia had underestimated me, and that mistake cost her her view, her dignity, and her imaginary authority over my backyard. And as I sat on the deck one quiet evening, sipping my drink and watching the sun set my way, I realized something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't shouting or fighting, it's building something better. The maple may have been gone, but what replaced it was far stronger. Did you enjoy watching how I stood up to HOA Karen? Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe so you don't miss any of my backyard battles, and drop a comment below telling me what you would do if someone cut down your tree. I read every single one of your stories.